welcome to Unleash Your Inner Goldilocks, how to get it just right. Thank you so much for joining us for another invigorating and deeply personal and meaningful conversation. Look around us. Everything around is changing. The seasons of the year, the economic cycles, the pandemic, our families growing up, us growing old. All of this is change. Change is an inevitable part of our everyday life. How do we understand it? How do we navigate it? And truly, how do we embrace it so that we are navigating it with success and with ease? And how do we do it? Do we do it alone? Do we need a support structure for it? All these questions come to our mind. And as we grapple with how am I going to deal with change, we also need to think about what is the mindset we need to bring when change is inevitable. You know, I look out from Chicago in the different seasons, and it reminds me when the autumn leaves change color and the leaves fall down, it's not the end of the plant, it's not the death. The story is not over. It's conserving the energy and preparing itself for the cold, hard winter to thrive and internally sustain itself to grow in the winter behind the scenes. And then when spring comes with the burst of color, with the flowers coming on, the trees come back to life. And then the leaves come, and then the fruits come, and then the life cycle continues. To me, that is Mother Nature's reminder that when challenges come my way, it's not my cue to shut down, but it's my cue to go within, draw all that energy and all that wisdom and all that experience, and use that and apply that to get myself reinvigorated and repositioned so that in the spring, when the cycle turns, I am ready to spring back to life and I come out with my light shining. How do I do that? How do I help others do that? And in this process, how do I stay positive? And how do I embrace my own light, even when it is like the new moon, right? The moon is still the moon, whether it's a full moon or a new moon. How do I relate to that and embrace all shapes and all stages of my life? That is such an important conversation. And to have that with me today is an exemplary coach who is also an actress. She's somebody who is in the theater, but also in the theater of life. And Mary Holmstrom, it is such an honor and pleasure to have you join us today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cass. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk about this with you today. I'm just like, oh, this is one of my favorite subjects.
I am glad to hear, because more than anything else in the field of acting, you have to change who you are the minute you get the cue to play your part. Right?
Yeah.
So tell us, how do you draw from that, and what have you learned through that process?
Oh, that's such a great question. As an actor, I think, we go through these different stages of becoming whoever it is that we're going to be portraying on film or in the theater. So it's a metamorphosis. And so it's an evolution. I think the language that we use around this is so important. People use the word change all the time, like we use love or hate. It's almost lost its meaning. Whereas sort of to what you were talking about in your introduction, it's really navigating. It's not a change. It's a recalibration. It's a course correction. So when I'm preparing myself for a role, whatever that is, even if I'm doing something as simple as an industrial for, a construction company, and I'm doing an educational manual or something like that, it's like, now I am this, and I'm evolving into this persona or this character so that people more readily gravitate to what it is that I'm saying and will listen to me, will be engaged. And I think we do that in life too.
Mhm. I love how you connected the dots. And as you're talking, what comes to my mind is the word avatar. Avatar is such a popular English word today, but it comes from my culture. Avatar literally in the Hindu tradition means reincarnation. We reincarnate ourselves into the different personas, just like I have my student avatar, I have my professor avatar, I have my coach avatar, I have my wife avatar, right? I play different roles, and in each role, I have to show up differently. While the core of me stays the same, the role I play is going to be different. And so throughout any given day, we're evolving. And I love how you integrated the recalibration, brings to my mind the GPS system, right? We
Right.
know where we need to go, we know what we need to do, but how do we course correct to get into that space to accomplish what we need to? And then how do we recalibrate to get back to where we need to go? Right? So
Right.
talk to me about how have you mastered the art of doing that with ease? Because it's not easy. It's going to be clunky the first few times you try.
Yeah, I think that we're always in the process of mastery. This is something that I don't know if we ever really fully come to our full mastery fruition, right? We're
Mhm.
always in that process, but we're always shifting that gyro, that internal gyro. I think you get to a certain point in life, and this is where most of my clients are at. That's where I was at with my own personal story when I started doing a significant course correction. I've always been a big risk taker in life. I've moved across the country, moved across the world a couple of times with no job, just kind of like throw me in the ocean and I'll figure out how to swim. I love people. I'm that person.
Mhm.
But when I got to a certain point in my life, I realized that I needed that course correction that was really going to be for the marathon. I think at some point we realize that we're not in a sprint. And this is where coaching comes in, right? Because I kind of determined a lot of that when I had my own coach. And I started to realize that, I need to make some significant changes here because I'm already X and I've only got, it's like that you come to that point in your life when you become keenly aware that you're going to be, you've been alive in the world longer than you will be moving forward. And all of a sudden things start shifting, whether you're, wherever you are. And that really stuck with me. And I was looking for the coach that I actually became. That's what I figured. That's what I designed as my calling, because I kind of realized that I had been coaching my whole life. And when I made that course correction, when I made that connection between the career that was supporting me and the acting career, when I kind of made that realization, I was able to move forward. But first, you have to be really self-aware.
Mhm.
And this is where the world's noise comes in. And this is what I usually end up tackling with a lot of my clients who are predominantly women who are being pulled in all of these different roles. I'm a mom, I'm a lover, I'm a worker, I'm a whatever you are, right? You fill all of these roles. The thing that you said before that was so interesting was that, and this is the same way, we were talking about I was as an actor. We show up in this particular role as a mom or whatever, and we adapt to that lane that we're in. Yet the adaptation is it's like faceted to the epicenter, right? It's me. I'm still looking at it through the lens of who I am. So I'm evolving, I'm metamorphosizing in this particular role, but I'm still me, but I get lost in that.
Mhm.
And that's what is, so now I ask the question, well, what's my foundation? Why do I feel like I can't fully be the mom in this or whatever direction I need to go into? And that's where I come in as a coach, because that's where a lot of my clients get stymied. And again, we're talking about the world's noise, all of the needs of everybody else. Who's taking care of the mothership?
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting you positioned it that way. We were talking before we started the recording, and we're both women. We do this. This is how we live, right? Women are so good at, whether we fully understand ourselves or not, we can get into the role we need to play to take care of the things that we need to take care of. So two things come to my mind. In this process of becoming what I need to be for those I love and to provide and protect the ones I love, how does every woman, regardless of age, continue to be self-aware and make the time for her? And in the process of being all these different things, how does she make sure she doesn't lose herself? Because the world expects so much of women, right? And
Yeah.
I always talk about this in the workplace. Everybody talks about work-life balance. No. When you say work, you're only calling it out as paid work. Men don't do unpaid work. Women do unpaid work. $1 billion plus worth of unpaid work is done by women around the world every single day. All the men in the world cannot afford to pay women for all the unpaid work they do. Right? That's why they're mothers, sisters, grandmothers, wives, aunts, and daughters, right?
Yeah.
Because if you have to pay, you can't get it done. Imagine if you have to have children through surrogacy, because no woman is going to have it for you for free. Imagine every meal has to be cooked, every space has to be cleaned, every clothing item has to be laundered. Start adding the cost. And what is the definition of a stay-at-home mom? It's not that she's not working. She's working twice as hard as the husband who goes to work, but she's not getting paid, right? So work has such a different definition, and the burdens on women for all this unpaid work is whitewashed. And this creates a scenario where women feel like, you know what, I can't do as much of the paid work, and am I worthy? When the entire structure of family and society will not exist if not for the unpaid work of women. How do women deal with that? And how do we bring the men of the world and even professional women into the sphere for people to understand with empathy that everybody's doing their part? And if we don't work together and evolve together, we're going to shortchange us.
Yeah, that is such a good question. And I think a lot of people are trying to answer it. How I would approach this. The first thing that comes up for me, is this. I don't know if you've ever heard this. There's this quote out there. Well, it's kind of a story about Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers. I don't know if you remember who they are. They were very famous dancers in the early 20th century. Brilliant, brilliant dancers. And they were partners in a lot of MGM movies. And they always went on about Fred Astaire, and Ginger Rogers. The thing is that she did the same moves that he did, but she did it backwards and she did it in heels. And that's what came up for me when you were telling me about it, because this is kind of what women do. And, where I would start, if you were my client and you were sitting in front of me and asking me this question, we start with intentionality. If you don't make time, you won't get time. No one will give it to you. So even for a moment, even for 5 minutes, self-awareness is huge. I need to fill up my own tank before I start helping others get through the day. But the intentionality, and that has a lot to do with the value. It has to do with the value system. And where I find a lot of the hurdle with the people that I work with, even in myself, is recognizing my value. What is my value? And am I being truthful about my value? Is my value in those things? Is it in those tasks? Is it in it just really takes you need to take a really good look at who you are as a person. I love that song by Nina Simone. I can't even remember the name of it now. I Got Life. But she talks about all of these, what she doesn't have. And then at the At the back end of the song, she talks about what she does have. She has her arms, she has her legs, she has her liver, she has all of these things. But it's just this empowerment song about what we have. Why are we focusing on what we don't have? So the intentionality and the recognition of the value. If I don't show you my value, why do I expect you to see the value in me? That's where I would start. And then usually that borders on like confidence and how I move forward in things. Again, this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. And people, especially in Western culture, we want things in a microwave minute. And that's where a coach comes in.
Mm-hmm. Brilliantly said. And as we are looking at different stages of life, I would love to take a moment and walk through those stages and what kind of options should a woman, a young lady, explore. So let's start with a young lady who is just entering university. Okay. She is home. And she's in a culture where she doesn't have flexibility. She doesn't have autonomy. Everything is micromanaged. And out in society, the girls don't have respect or freedom because that's most of the world today. And yet this young girl has her dreams. She has her aspirations. And she wants what she wants. And she's determined she's going to go after it. How can a young girl like that, young lady like that, make sure that she's evolving and finding the right support system? Because that's the other thing. In most cultures, women are not strong enough to be the support system. But for the success of every woman's life, regardless of age, it's the sisterhood that matters, right? So how does a young girl start identifying who is my support system of different generation, different ages? If I'm not getting this at home, how do I find it outside? How do I evolve? And who is going to be my strength to evolve and support my evolution?
Oh, that is such a good question. And it's a tough question.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think that it may be a good place to start to be listening.
Mm-hmm.
Who is in my sphere of influence? Again, we're being present and we're being intentional. My choices, how I feel internally, how I know what my value is, has nothing to do with that other person. Your opinion of me is none of my business. Now, I understand I'm painting with broad brushstrokes. I don't know everyone's circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to pretend like I understand all of the intricacies of different cultures and the ins and outs of cultures. But what I do know is that my confidence, my value, how I choose to see that, if I'm being truthful with myself, there's value. And if I'm going to be on the hot pursuit of those who will support me and who will edify me in my role and moving forward, sometimes it starts with listening. Mm-hmm. Who is in my sphere of influence? Giving that close attention. And then I would say, you know, reaching out to those people, an auntie, a neighbor. Again, I'm painting with broad brushstrokes here. But I think that we often don't listen. We're constantly doing. We're participating. And for a young girl, I work with some students here where I live. And one of the questions that I get asked a lot is, how do I get more confidence? Mm-hmm. And these are women that are, you know, they're pursuing non-traditional professions like welding and architecture. Mm-hmm. And again, we're back to the question of value. If you have an opportunity to journal, start writing down what your value is. It's not the only thing that gains you more confidence, but when you are listening, you are authentic to who you are, and you know what your value is. That's where it starts. It's not everything, but it's going down the right road. It's starting down the right path.
Mm-hmm. And I love how you are kicking off the process for a young lady, because it starts with self-awareness and self-management, right? So reminding the young lady, we can't control everybody else around us. we can only manage what we give permission to affect us.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And the minute we are able to impart that wisdom, then the young ladies can start thinking about, okay, what is my value? Who values me? Who do I draw from to build myself up? And who do I shut out and not absorb from?
Right. Right.
And the minute we can set those boundaries, then all the other pieces start falling into place, because we don't want negative self-talk. We don't want to be reminded of the negativity around us. And unfortunately, in most places, it's the family and your immediate surroundings that's doing that to you. So it's a matter of being in that environment, because that's still your home and you're a minor and you just got to get up and leave, right?
Yeah.
But how do you stay within and stay out of it? And that is the strength of self-management. So I'm glad you talked about being self-aware. And then I would add the self-management part, so that you're building towards becoming the woman you're meant to be.
Yeah.
And don't get bogged down by people around you.
Right. I think we're going back to an important point that I just mentioned before, that a lot of this is the world's noise. We're listening to everybody else except ourselves, especially when we're younger. We want to be cool. We want to be, we want to have X. We want to accomplish X. We want to do, boyfriend, whatever it happens to be. Like we're trying to fit in. We're trying to accomplish all of these things that the world tells us that we need to accomplish and be all of those things. So that would also be a really great point that I would point out to somebody, is to be blocking out the world's noise. Which is everywhere. It's through our phones. It's through the computer. It's through television. It's through everything.
Absolutely.
We need to shut out the world's noise. And we really need to, again, we're back to the self-awareness and the intentionality and knowing what my value is and listening. And then I can move forward.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Now let's imagine the young lady has a career. She is moving up. Now the evolution becomes different. There are career choices and life choices. And then there are opportunities to fall in love, get married, start a family. What do I hold on to? What do I give up? How much is too much to give up? These are all things women have to deal with, because normally men don't have to deal with this.
Yeah. Well, I think like every woman, you need to, I would start taking stock. Again, I think we're back to self-awareness. We're taking stock so let's say we're 35, had a couple kids, we're married, got a career, whatever it happens to be. Where are you right now? Who are you right now? We're always course correcting. We're always evolving. It's building upon that person that we were when we were 20. So what are we investing here? What are we investing in over here? And then we've got the world's noise, and we get, and I'm backing this up into, again, my own experience and into the clients that I'm working with. So a lot of the people that I'm working with are getting to that stage that you're describing, and they're saying, hold the phone. This isn't what I thought it was going to be. And I've lost myself. Who am I right now? And there's all these needs. Again, we're back to, what is the course correction that you need to make? So I would first be, because I mean, you want to go to New York, you're 1 degree off. You're going to Orlando. I don't want to go to Disney. I want to go to the Empire State. I want to go someplace else. So again, what is my value? What am I sitting in right now? What is my self-awareness? I think that there's a lot of taking stock evaluation in that recalibration. Now, when you're in a situation, I'm working with a client right now. She's got a special needs child. She's got another smaller child. Her husband is, again, outside of the home. He's bringing in the salary, and she's responsible for everything else. At least that's my perception at this point, based on what's been described to me. But she has this creative passion. She has this other side. And so we're focusing on that. we're bringing that back to its intentionality where it should be, because that's what the source is that's feeding everything else. Again, we're going kind of back to what we were talking about earlier, filling up our tank. So we have this connection to what we were when we were younger. And now we're in this situation where we have all of these other things that are determining our dependency, our intention, our time, everything is being zapped. So where am I grounding myself? In who am I grounding myself in? That's where I would take people back to. That's what we need to start evaluating with, which you can do with a coach, you can do with friends, you can do with other people. Again, we're kind of back to this marathon, not a sprint thing. And I want to just talk a little bit about that, because this is usually when people start hiring coaches. Some people do when they're younger, but I think that there's this misnomer out there, especially in the United States, where we have coaches that are football coaches and basketball coaches and baseball coaches. We have coaches for sports. We have coaches for a lot of things, but life is like a marathon. So coaching for people it's not a luxury. This is a tool that people can use in order to get some of this recalibration. And that's why I work with these clients, so that I'm not invested in you in a personal way. I'm invested in you in a professional way. And I'm going to say things to you, not as a friend or a family member, but as a coach to get you further ahead of the game, to help you in that recalibration. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I am a believer that if Michael Jordan and Tiger Woods need a coach, the rest of us do too.
That's such a good
Right?
point. Yeah, I love that. Yes. And every single one of them do. And they pay a lot of money for really, really good life coaches.
And a lot of times we can't, just like we don't hear our voice the way we sound, right? The way we hear ourselves is different from when you listen to your own recording. And I'm like, is that how I really sound? Because right now we're hearing ourselves from inside our head, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so life is the same. When you're in it, you don't see all of the moving pieces, and it requires another person to come and help you, right? And that's not a bad thing. It's a necessary thing. Coaches have coaches, right?
Yes.
Because we all have blind spots.
Don't trust a coach who isn't getting coached themselves.
Yes. You're a coach. I'm a coach. We have a network of coaches. We look out for each other. We look out for each other's blind spots. How do we continue to do that? And especially as women, research shows that the successful life of a man is directly correlated to the wife or the woman in his life. The success of a woman is directly correlated to her tribe and her sisterhood. Because it's only women who can hold space for women. Men are serial thinkers. They can only go from point A to point B. They can't take a look at the entire environment and look at all the moving pieces and connect the dots. They're not genetically wired for it, right? So even the best of husbands, the best of fathers can't be what a woman can be for another woman. And we also live in a world where women tend to be more competitive. Research also shows that when there is intrasexual competition, the support system suffers. So if career is based on quota and only 2 women can have these positions, then everybody is fighting for it. If there are a limited number of good men, then everybody is fighting for that romantic interest. So society, socially engineered intrasexual competition for women truly becomes a roadblock. So given that that is a reality, can we just take a moment and talk through how we can break those barriers and build a support system as we grow older? Because geography doesn't matter. We women can be there for each other regardless of geography. How do we build those bridges, and how do we nurture those relationships and find time for them as we are evolving? Because the older we get, the more we need that structure.
Yeah. Yeah. This is a great question, because I've confronted this in many places. And again, we're painting with broad brushstrokes. And I want to be careful to note that, because everyone has a different upbringing. I had a perfect upbringing. I'm just kidding. But it was pretty good. My parents were, they really treated me on many levels as an equal. I was always brought into a conversation. I didn't really understand what sexism was until I got out into the workforce. Like I just didn't have a lot of these constructs that a lot of women are walking into. So I feel very fortunate in the fact that I had such stable, I just had a very good upbringing. I only started making mistakes when I got out on my own. But I think a lot of the way we can start to address this is, we want to recognize what we are not in control of, but what I am in control of, but we don't want to get too myopic. And so a lot of this, what's reverberating in my head, what comes up for me now is kind of what you do in a lot of ways. What you have done for me is women holding women up, giving time and space to other women. So what is that? That's really serving someone in a very practical way. When we get outside of ourselves, in other words, I don't have this myopic view of it's just me, me, me. I have to fill up my tank. Yes, there's a balance of that. And when you are in those, so again, self-awareness. I went to a private school years ago where it was a private school, and there were a lot of women there, and the women outnumbered the men. And at some point I noticed that a lot of the women, like you were saying, they were vying, they were looking for a husband. That was one of the reasons why they were there. Yeah. And I couldn't relate to this. I was there to study, and, I don't know if I was just really naive. And some of them accomplished their goal, but their personality, the way they engaged with me was not this. It was the opposite of that. And it's a great example of what you're talking about. So how do we serve each other? We listen. We're aware of our surroundings, obviously. But again, we're back to the value question. How am I valuing myself? Because how I value myself is reflective in how I value you. Mm-hmm. So I see the value in another person. This is what's so personal, and yet it's universal, right? Because we all have value. There are no duplicates. God doesn't want any duplicates. We are very unique. And so when we are recognizing that in each other, especially as women, and lifting each other up, it doesn't do me any good to play bigger in order to make you feel smaller. Mm-hmm. It doesn't serve anything. And it's almost like a self-sabotage within a community. It can be.
Totally, totally. And as you are talking, it's coming up for me. Yes, we accidentally met, and we built a good relationship. We talk, we lift each other up, right? Yeah. And what allows us to do that without fear, with the confidence, is that we each have our self-worth. We each have our value. And we know that by sharing my light with you, mm-hmm. I don't diminish. And when you share your light with me, you don't diminish. It's just that we're going to light up the whole street, but neither of us are going to lose our own light.
Right.
And that level of awareness is what we need to help women accomplish, because without that, we can't be each other's support system.
Right. Right. It's actually giving mm-hmm. someone permission to shine their own light. Yes. Right. Mm-hmm. The more I am vulnerable with you, I share more of myself with you, mm-hmm. and I trust you. But that gives me permission to really shine. And it's okay. Here's the thing too about women is that it's like we have this, again, the world's noise. We have to be everything to everyone all the time. I have to be up at 5. I have to be making breakfast and get my kids to school. I have to be CEO. I have to be the best lover. I have to be the best friend to everyone. I have to be on the PTA. I have to be all these things. We have to be super women. And we're not allowed to show weakness. I struggle with this myself. It's like, I can't let anyone see that I'm weak because they're depending upon my strength. Well, that's pretty arrogant. Why am I not recognizing the strength in them too? It's like I don't give people credit enough, right? It's
Mhm.
like this big mind game that we play with ourselves. And so
And
it's
I love,
therapeutic for me to even talk to you about that, because it's okay. I know that it's okay with you if I'm not always so strong.
absolutely. And as you are talking, the image that comes to mind is a lot of times women who are strong feel that they have to always be the giver. And in my mind's image, when you're giving, your hand is on the top, and whoever who's receiving their hand is at the bottom. In some ways, there is ego involved. And it takes the ability to let go of the ego and ask for help. And the relationship gets stronger when we ask for help from the same people we are giving help, because it levels the playing field and that relationship becomes equal on equal footing, right? Even if I'm helping a young girl, let's say, hey, I will do all of these for you, but here is where I need your help. Can you please step in and help me here too? So now, while the generational difference is there, the generational difference also creates the opportunity to give and receive help. And together we are better, and we grow and evolve together.
Mm-hmm.
And that mindset becomes important.
Yeah. Yeah. The mindset is so important. I would say that that is that's part of the first shift in recalibrating is my mindset. And I do this in my practice too. I'm a energy leadership index master practitioner. That's one of my certifications. And so all that's just fancy for, I give you an assessment that can scientifically show you percentage wise based on a series of questions that have already been worked out in advance. I don't know how they do it, but they do the science. It's science. And it literally shows you, I can show you how you're showing up in life. And when you have an accurate display of how you're showing up in life, now we can start shifting that mindset. Whether you're 25 or you're 35, you're in retirement, it doesn't matter what age, because we kind of get in these rungs. We get in the rungs of the, like in olden days, in days of yore, when we had the stage coaches and they would make those ruts in the road and you wouldn't want to divert because that's how, you got the horses and you got the wheels. And I have this vision of, because if you go off, you might go over the cliff or your wagon might tip over. Well, I don't want you to go over a cliff. That was kind of extreme. It's okay. It's okay if we tip over. Like, that's the thing too. It's okay if you make mistakes. It's okay if we tip over. We're
Yeah.
not infallible.
We truly learn when we make mistakes, right? When we never make mistakes, we never
That's
learn.
right.
I always
Yes.
look up at the light bulb and say, you know what? Edison took more than 10,000 different ways of learning to make a bulb before he made the one.
Right.
If
Right.
we gave up after 10,000 times, we wouldn't have light bulbs today. We probably wouldn't even have computers today. Without the light bulb, a lot of things wouldn't be here today.
Right.
So mistake is not the end. Mistake is actually a learning opportunity. We know this from learning to ride a bike. You cannot learn to ride a bike if you don't fall down and scrape your knees. That's a
Right.
given.
If you're not making mistakes, you're not learning. And yeah. And I mean, to rest in that and to say, okay, I'm not perfect. And I don't have to be perfect. There is no one that's perfect. You're always in metamorphosis. You're always in course correction. But then there's these bigger ones, right? Career, momhood, retirement, death of a loved one. There are those huge course corrections too. And that's usually what I'm tackling in my practice. But it's those little things along the way. It's those little bits and bobs that can make all the difference in the world. It can make the difference between going to the Empire State or Orlando, Florida.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This has been a fun and exciting conversation. Before I open it up for conversation with our live audience, Mary, can you take a quick minute and share with us how our audience can get a hold of you? If they want to talk to you, get to know you, hire you to be a coach, whatever it may be.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very easy to get in touch with me. I'm on the internet. My website is compasscoaching.com. And coaching is spelled with a K. So it's COMPASSKOACHING. Had to get creative with that. And or info@compasscoaching.com. Very easy to get in touch with me. I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. There's a lot of places that you can find me.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary. And I have made sure that all the communications for the promo has a link to your LinkedIn so
Thank
that everybody
you.
can find you. So
Thank you for lifting me up, Dr. Cass.
my pleasure and my honor. And let's open this up. We have our regulars here. We have a regular community that joins. We consider ourselves the Goldilocks
Great.
community. So let's open this up and see what comes up for them. Go
Love
ahead,
to hear it.
Robin.
Oh, I realized I opened my face, but not my voice. So great to hear, and a fabulous conversation. I so appreciate it. Even though I had my MBA, I was a stay-at-home mom for 15 years.
Wow.
And then began working part-time, then a little more part-time, then a little more part-time. So I totally get the notion of unpaid work that's not valued. And then being able to hear and find your own voice. Everything you've said is just really fabulous. And you've said it in such a gentle and coherent way. So a question I would say is, how do you get women or men for that matter to listen? You've talked about, getting people to listen to your inner voice or your inner person, but to listen and then to believe it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, how do you, because it's one thing to intellectually tell yourself I am enough.
Mm-hmm.
It's another thing to really truly believe it, and then that more deep-seated belief will begin to shift your actions.
Right. Yeah, that is a great question. Thank you so much, Robin, for showing up this morning. It's so nice to see you.
It's 7:00 in California. Where are you located again, Mary?
I'm in Minnesota. And where are you in California? I'm a Californian.
I'm in Los Angeles.
Oh, okay. I'm in Northern California.
So even though it's very cold, it's gotten down to like the 40s and 50s here in California.
Oh, wow.
I'm sure that's balmy weather for you there in Minnesota.
Yeah, that would be very nice. I think
complain.
it's like 22 and gloomy. It is a bleak midwinter. I love your question. Thank you so much for asking that. There's two things that I would say to that. Number one, when it comes to my self-value, when it comes to knowing what my intrinsic value is and my authentic person, what am I anchoring myself in? You said something really important. How do I believe that? I can say that intellectually, but how do I connect that 18 inches, right? It's between the heart and the head. So what am I anchoring myself in? For me, it's my faith. I am a child of God and he gives me my worth. And that's what I'm anchoring myself in. And I steep myself in what he says about me, not what I say about myself. Because again, I'm totally fallible. I make mistakes. I do all these things, but I'm not a duplicate. I am special. And I know that about myself. I look like my father. I am so attractive. I look like my father. Mm. The other question you asked was about how do we get people to see that, to see our value? Kind of how do we bring people around? Am I understanding that? That was the question?
Not necessarily, but it's a good one. So go ahead.
My answer to that, what I would say to you is, you can't get people to see you that way. You can't make someone see you if they're not willing to see you. All you can do is show up and know your own value. You can show people your value. I did that for 20 plus years in corporate. There's some saying out there that say, don't be too good at what you do because they'll never promote you. That was me. I was really good at my job. I'm really good at organizing really powerful people, but I never got beyond that. They wanted to keep me where I was because I was really, really good at it. And when I finally recognized that, that was part of my course correction. So people will see your value, but they'll use it for themselves. Not all the time. Again, I'm painting with broad brushstrokes. But again, you can't control what somebody thinks about you. Your opinion of me is none of my business. But I can control how I show up, how I show my value, how I steep in my own value.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. Thank you so much.
What a beautiful set of questions. And I love
the question.
The calmness and the ease with which you gave the answer, Mary. So if I may add to that, when I am listening to both of you talk, we are each a thinking, feeling human being who acts, right? But the fundamental fact is that we are feeling creatures who happen to think. We're not thinking creatures who happen to feel.
Yeah.
So if we start from the fact that I am a living being who feels, and I'm connecting to that soul that is within me, that is feeling, and my body is the conduit for acting, and my brain is the conduit for thinking, then everything comes from that place of feeling. And I connect with other people from that place of feeling, because we may think differently, we may act differently, but we all feel the same pain. We all feel the same fear. We all feel the same love, right? So anger, fear, sadness, love are the 4 major emotions. If we all feel the same, how do we connect with each other? And how do I connect with me from that place? And then I agree with you, faith is everything. If I believe that I always told myself, my life is a gift from my God, and how I live my life is my gift back to my God. And this is between me and my God, not my parents, not my uncles and aunts, not the country in the middle of a bloody civil war. None of that mattered, because it allowed me to focus, right?
Yeah.
So if whatever our faith is, if we can connect to that, because the life didn't come from our parents, the life came from our maker, right? Our body came from our parents. And if we can connect to that something even stronger and more omnipresent than physical beings, that gives you the ability to draw the strength from the universe. It's the energy source, right? And then in terms of other people, I have found that, I was very successful in my career, very young in life, became a CFO for a Fortune 100 company. By the time I was 32, less than 5 years in the United States. But I always thought about it from the perspective of, if you don't see my value, I am going to take it away and go someplace else. And a lot of times people see your value when you're no longer there. Make them miss you. Make them pick up that phone and call you. And every job I took, only my first job I applied. My promise to myself is every other job, every other engagement, now as a consulting practice, I don't seek people, people seek me. I educate them, I empower them, and I want them to seek me because they need to come because they see my value.
Yeah.
If I have to prove my value to you, we are never going to get to the bottom of the value conversation.
Right. Love that. So beautifully said. Yeah.
Go ahead, Nandini. I know you have something to add. Oh, we lost her. No, she's there.
Hi. My question is actually stemming from the value, and I'm wondering if, both of you have any perspectives on, like you both of you mentioned about showing up and showing your value, but how do you know that you're authentically doing that? Because you think that you are, and then you don't realize that you're not until you're not,
Well, I guess I would ask the question, why would you think, if you think you're showing up, if you've done the work to sort of sit and be reflective of what your value is, what you know about yourself, why would you think that you weren't showing up as valuable in the middle of a situation or where you're showing up?
I'm not sure. Maybe maybe it's because someone needs to work on their fundamentals, I guess, to figure out that you're showing up, you think you're showing up in a value, but the value that you thought you were bringing, was not the right one for you. Does that make sense?
So as I'm listening to you, Nandini, I know you, right? So what I would say is building on Mary's question. When we cross cultures and go into another culture to work, Nandini is a physician, ophthalmologist, surgeon. Born and raised, she is South Asian, Indian, born and raised in Malaysia, educated in India, coming to the US. So the way we communicate, the way we value life, the way we value relationships in the East is different from the West. So what we believe we are doing based on our cultural underpinnings may not fly in the West, because the West values different things. The best explanation I can give is, here I am, a young CFO, and everybody wants to know what car I'm driving, and I'm driving a 2017 Honda Accord. And my entire team is driving Beamers and Mercedeses, and they're placing value on the brand of the automobile. And the women wear Louis Vuitton purses, and they ask me, Cass, why don't you wear brands? I'm like, I don't believe in wearing brands because they're not always humane to the people who make those brands. I come from the part of the world that makes those brands, and I'd rather have my money in my bank, not on my purse, right? So values can be different, and therefore what is valued is different. And sometimes we can forget, or we may not be aware, that we need to pivot in a way that they can see us. Because if we don't show up in a way it's recognizable to the culture we're in, we have made ourselves invisible because we have not evolved to be relatable, if that makes sense. Because I have the same cultural experience, right? So we are raised different. And if we show up exactly the way we are raised and what is congruent to the culture, it is not acceptable here.
Yeah. And sometimes you lose your, like, I feel like I lose my core because I'm trying to adapt and pivot to be accepted, to be seen as worthy. And so,
yeah, I love what you guys are. I love this kind of a conversation. And I love what you said, Dr. Henry, about the purses. I always say to people, well, I think to myself, but for years, I'm not a walking billboard. I'm not here to advertise for Chanel. I love Chanel, but I'm not going to advertise for Chanel. But again, it comes back to this value thing. I think the example of the Mercedes-Benz and the Honda Accord or the other car is such a great example, because especially in the Western world, this is so much what we put our value in, is our things. And the car that we drive is reflective of apparently who we are on the inside, right? Or who we want people to perceive us as. And again, it's getting back to the core. I love what you said about getting to the core of who you are. So it's not adapting to what the world is dictating to you about your value and what your values and belief is, what they are. If you know that you're a Honda Accord, you're a Honda Accord. And there's nothing wrong with that. If other people are trying to impose that upon you, now we're talking about that toxic realm. The seed that I'm planting, not only what am I cultivating where I'm planted, but where am I cultivating it? Who's being cultivated around me? But we live in the world, right? It's impossible to get away from this. So again, we're getting back to the intentionality of what we know about our value and how we're moving forward with that and showing other people that you're a leader in what you do. You're an influencer. It's how you choose to show up. So is the local custodian of the school. So is my mailman. We're all leaders. It's how we choose to show up. And that's based in our value and how we see our value and show up. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense. Yeah, about realizing your own worth before you can show other people your worth.
But
Yeah,
it's more
thank
than
you.
that. It's not being influenced by what other people are telling you your worth should be.
Because their intentions might not be pure, their intentions might be toxic, their intentions might be to get you off your equilibrium to control you.
So is there any tips that you can give the young professionals out there to realize that? I guess that's to kind of delineate and understand, like, okay, this influence is there, but to give themselves the strength to say, yes, I see you and I understand, but I'm going this way.
Again, for me, it comes back to my anchor. Who am I anchoring myself in? What am I anchoring myself in?
Mhm.
Because this is a marathon. It's not a sprint.
Mhm. And I love how you keep going back to that, Mary, because that's the place of authenticity. If we come from a place of authenticity, then at some point, people have to accept. I look at Warren Buffett, my client. He doesn't care what people say. He's driving a good old beat up car, right? He lives in the same house he's lived for years. He doesn't wear designer clothes. It's okay. And he was like that as he was becoming Warren Buffett, and he is like that after becoming Warren Buffett. So as we bring this conversation to a close, and we've talked so much about value, one of the things that's coming up for me is there are two ways of looking at life. We value things and we use people, or we value people and we use things.
Exactly.
Each get to decide which end of the spectrum we fall into. And if you are the kind of person who values people and things are to be used to facilitate the relationship and enhance the light and the collaboration with each other, then stay in that company and don't buy anything that is being sold by and influenced by the people who value things and use people to get more things. And as long as we have that in perspective, we are going to be always embracing our self-worth, and we will have a network of people who truly value our humanity because that's who they are. Surrounding ourselves with the right people who value humanity and the things we have is to enhance the human experience. That is where the magic lies. And from a Goldilocks perspective, that is what it means by getting it just right. Thank you for this wonderful conversation. And I cannot wait for you to join us next week. And in the meantime, Mary, thank you so very much for this enlightening conversation, and to our live audience for always being here, always coming, and making sure this community grows and thrives. And we continue to build a community that is rooted in our human values.